Imagine having, like, one truly bad day at work. Just one singular moment where you're sitting in a meeting and you need a little more clarification than everyone else in the room.
Oh, yeah. That's the worst.
Right. And now imagine that for the next 2,000 years, that one moment becomes your entire legacy. I mean, your actual name becomes a dictionary synonym for a failure to believe.
Yeah, it is without a doubt the worst, longest-lasting public relations nightmare in human history. We just slap a label on someone, strip away all their nuance, and it just sticks for millennia.
Which is completely reductive. But today, we're taking a massive detour from that conventional narrative. Welcome to this deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our resident expert. And our mission today is to completely flip your perspective on a very famous historical and biblical figure. We are going to rescue Thomas the Apostle from his centuries-old label of doubting Thomas.
And we're doing it by looking through a completely different, honestly, an almost startling lens. We have a fascinating stack of sources in front of us today for this deep dive.
We really do.
Primarily, this esoteric text titled The 12 Apostles and Freemasonry Chapter 08 Thomas, along with an incredibly striking piece of visual art that blends classical Christian iconography with heavily coded Masonic symbolism.
So the mission for you, the listener, is to see how these esoteric, alchemical, and Masonic traditions view Thomas, not as a skeptic who somehow failed the test of faith, but as the ultimate archetypal spiritual alchemist.
Exactly.
By the end of this deep dive, you're going to see how Thomas's journey isn't just ancient trivia. It's a profound, practical blueprint for navigating your own uncertainty, avoiding information overload, and finding deeper, actual truths in your life. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, to really understand this esoteric version of Thomas, we first have to look at the historical and biblical Thomas. Because even if you only look at the standard canonical texts, the doubter label is wildly incomplete.
Right, it's missing so much context.
Completely. If you actually read the Gospel of John, Thomas is incredibly dynamic and honestly pretty fearless.
He definitely isn't just sitting in the corner crossing his arms and scoffing at things. Like, let's look at John chapter 11, verse 16. Jesus is preparing to return to Judea.
Right, the trip to Judea.
And at this point in the narrative, going to Judea is incredibly dangerous. People are actively threatening to stone him. It's essentially a death sentence.
Yeah, they were actively trying to kill him.
And what does Thomas say? He looks at the other disciples, who are presumably terrified, and says, "Let us also go, that we may die with him."
It's a moment of fierce, almost reckless loyalty. I mean, there is zero hesitation and certainly no doubt in that statement. It is just sheer, unadulterated courage.
And then later, during the Last Supper discourse in John 14, Jesus is speaking somewhat cryptically. He's talking about leaving and preparing a place, and Thomas is the one who puts the brakes on the conversation.
He actually interrupts him.
Yeah. He stops him and says, "Lord, we know not whither thou goest, and how can we know the way?" Which, by the way, prompts Jesus to deliver one of the most famous lines in all of theology, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Thomas plays the vital role of the honest questioner there. He's the catalyst for the revelation. If he doesn't ask the question, we don't get the answer.
I was reading through this source material and thinking, Thomas is exactly like that one brave student in a highly complex lecture who actually raises their hand and says, "I don't get it."
Oh, definitely. We've all been in that room.
Right. He might look like the slow one to all the people in the room who are just nodding along, pretending to understand. But his demand for absolute clarity actually unlocks the core lesson for everyone else.
What's fascinating here is how that exact same dynamic plays out in the famous resurrection narrative. This is the moment that gave him the notorious nickname.
The big one.
The big one, yeah. Christ appears to the disciples, but Thomas happens to be absent. When they tell him later, he demands physical proof. In John 20.25, he explicitly says that unless he sees the nail prints in his hands, he will not believe.
He needs the receipts. He just refuses to take someone else's word for it.
Exactly. But look at the mechanism of what happens next. 8 days later, Christ appears again and specifically invites Thomas to touch his wounds.
Right.
And Thomas delivers what theologians consider the absolute deepest, most profound confession of faith in the entire gospel. He says, "My Lord and my God."
And here's the kicker for me. Christ doesn't strike him down with lightning for asking for proof. He blesses him.
Yeah, there's no condemnation.
None. The biblical text doesn't condemn his doubt. It actually frames it as a gateway.
Yeah.
The doubt is the exact mechanism that leads to this profound realization.
And that realization propelled him far beyond Judea. The sources point out his post-biblical journey. According to tradition and apocryphal texts like the Acts of Thomas, he journeys eastward.
Way eastward.
Yeah, he preaches in Parthia, eventually making it all the way to India. And in those texts, he's not portrayed as a reluctant, stumbling disciple at all. He is presented as a powerful, Gnostic revealer of hidden, esoteric truths.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because this is where the source material takes a huge leap.
It's a big jump, yeah.
We've established that the Bible gives him a pass on his doubt. But that still doesn't explain how he became a poster child for secret societies and alchemy centuries later. I'm struggling to see the bridge here.
That's a fair point.
Like, how do we get from a guy asking for physical proof in Judea to, well, to magic and masonry? Standard Christianity and esoteric Freemasonry are historically pretty at odds. How do these sources justify blending them so seamlessly through one guy?
It all comes down to his name, or rather, his historical surname, Didymus.
Didymus, which translates to the twin.
Yes, exactly. This is the secret key to his deeper psychological meaning across all these traditions. Because if doubt isn't the opposite of faith, what is it?
Well, what do they argue it is?
Our sources argue it's the other half of the coin. In esoteric traditions, twins almost always symbolize a duality that must be integrated, not split apart. Spirit and body, light and shadow, reason and faith.
So they're two sides of the same whole.
Yes. Thomas is the archetypal figure who walks between these opposites to unite them.
Wait, so this twin concept isn't a Jekyll and Hyde situation. It's not a battle where the good faith has to murder the evil doubt.
No, not at all.
It's more about acknowledging that our skepticism and our belief are essentially roommates in the same brain.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's not a battle to the death, it is a reconciliation. If we connect this to the bigger picture, achieving actual wholeness as a human being requires embracing the tension between those forces. You see this across multiple ancient traditions mentioned in the text. In Hermeticism, for example, you have the higher self, the nous, which is considered the twin of the lower embodied self.
Okay, the nous.
Yeah. Or in Kabbalah, you have the nefesh, which is the animal or vital soul, existing alongside the neshama, the divine soul.
Hold on, let me pause you there, because you just threw out nous, nefesh, and neshama. For the person listening while driving or making coffee, what does this actually mean for their daily life?
Fair enough. Let's strip away the ancient mysticism for a second and look at it through the lens of Jungian psychology. Thomas perfectly represents the integration of the shadow.
The shadow being the parts of ourselves we try to reject, ignore, or hide away.
Precisely. Our uncertainty, our fear, our deeply rooted skepticism. In modern society, we often try to repress those things to present a unified, polished front of certainty.
We definitely do. We hate looking like we don't know what we're doing.
Exactly. But Carl Jung argued, and this esoteric reading of Thomas confirms, that to become a fully realized person, an initiate, you have to confront that inner twin. When you repress your doubt, it becomes toxic.
Because it just sits there under the surface.
Yeah, you become rigid, dogmatic, and fragile. You can't reach wholeness by amputating your doubt. You have to integrate it.
But integrating that doubt requires practically breaking down your old self to build a new one. You can't just slap a fresh coat of paint over a rotting foundation. Which brings us to a concept in the source material that absolutely blew my mind, the alchemy of doubt.
Yes, this is where the psychological process perfectly mirrors the ancient art of alchemy.
Okay, let's break this down. In alchemy, there's this initial critical stage called the nigredo, the blackness.
Yes, the nigredo. It represents confusion, decay, and the total dissolution of prior identity. The text aligns Thomas completely with this stage.
Because his whole worldview just collapsed.
Exactly. When Jesus dies, Thomas is plunging into the dark night of the soul where everything he thought was certain has completely dissolved.
It's like gutting a kitchen. You can't just put beautiful new cabinets over rotting drywall and bad plumbing. You have to tear it all down to the studs.
That's a great analogy.
It looks like total destruction, but it's actually the prerequisite for building the new, stronger version.
That is exactly how an alchemist views the prima materia, the base material. An alchemist literally has to dissolve it before they can even attempt to create the philosopher's stone.
So they break it down to build it up.
Right. The alchemical term is solve, meaning to dissolve or break apart. In spiritual terms, the seeker has to let go of inherited, secondhand beliefs.
So when Thomas says, "I will not believe unless I see it myself," that is the solve. He is actively dissolving his assumptions. He's refusing to just inherit the faith of the other apostles. And then his ultimate realization, my Lord and my God, is the coagula. the reconstitution. He puts the kitchen back together. But this time, it's based on direct personal gnosis, not just what the other guys told him.
He absolutely refused to accept someone else's spiritual homework. And that insistence on direct inner knowing leads us to one of the most fascinating texts in early Christianity, which the source material heavily relies on.
Oh, the Gospel of Thomas.
Yes, the Gospel of Thomas.
This is the text found in the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt in the 1940s, right?
Yes. It's a non-canonical Gnostic text attributed directly to Didymus Thomas. Unlike the biblical Gospels, it doesn't tell a narrative story about Jesus' life, his miracles, or his crucifixion.
So it's not a biography.
Not at all. It's just a raw collection of 114 sayings, or logia, and they're deeply cryptic, focusing entirely on inner enlightenment.
The source specifically highlights Logian 77 from that text, which says, "Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there." Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone listening.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this text completely changes the vibe from strict, top-down religious doctrine to a highly personal, mystical treasure hunt.
How so? Like, how would you frame that for the listener?
Well, think about how we usually process information. We wait for an expert or a boss to hand down the truth. But Logian 77 says you don't need a middleman.
Right.
Whether you're researching a new philosophy, trying to solve a massive problem at your job, or figuring out your own ethics, the divine, or the truth, is in the raw materials right in front of you. Split the wood, lift the stone. You have direct access to it.
In Masonic terms, as the text points out, this gospel represents what is called the esoteric word.
The esoteric word.
Yes, it's the hidden utterance. It is not the booming, authoritative voice spoken openly in the lodge. It is the quiet, undeniable truth that is heard entirely within the heart of the seeker once they've done that hard work of dissolving their assumptions.
And this idea of descending into the dark, doing the hard work yourself to find that hidden truth, leads us directly into the rich Masonic parallels described in our sources. Because Thomas's psychological arc apparently maps perfectly onto the Master Mason degree.
It really does. In Masonic tradition, the Master Mason degree is the pinnacle. It involves a symbolic death, a profound experience of loss, and the intense search for what is called the lost word.
The lost word.
Right. And this is directly comparable to the foundational Masonic myth, which is the loss of Hiram Abiff.
Whoa, pause. Who is Hiram Abiff, and why does losing him require entering a metaphorical tomb?
Okay, so Hiram Abiff is a central allegorical figure in Freemasonry. He is presented as the chief architect of King Solomon's temple.
Got it.
According to the allegory, he is murdered by 3 ruffians who try to force him to reveal the secret passwords of a Master Mason. He refuses and takes the secrets to his grave.
Oh, wow. So the secrets are just gone.
Exactly. So the initiate going through the Master Mason degree has to grapple with this profound loss of knowledge. They have to symbolically enter the tomb, the darkness, to discover that the true secrets of Masonry aren't passwords at all, but spiritual truths about mortality and integrity.
Okay, so the core lesson there being that ultimate truth cannot simply be handed down on a silver platter. You can't just memorize a password. You have to encounter the reality of the darkness yourself.
Exactly. And the Force argues that Thomas embodies the specific working tools used in that journey, namely the square and the compass.
Let's talk about these tools because I want to make sure we explain how they actually function as metaphors. This is where the visual source we have really brings everything together. The text argues that Thomas embodies the square. How does a literal square represent doubt?
Well, think about what a Mason uses a square for. It measures, it checks angles.
Right, to make sure things are straight.
Exactly. It ensures that a stone is perfectly true so that the building doesn't collapse. It's rigorous, uncompromising, and highly critical. The text argues that Thomas's doubt is the square. He's testing the structural integrity of his reality.
Ah, okay. So his doubt isn't cynicism, it's a structural integrity check. And then his faith is the compass.
Right. While the square grounds you in harsh material reality, the compass is used to draw a wide, encompassing boundary around the infinite. It traces the circle of the divine mystery.
So you need both.
To build a proper spiritual temple, yes. You need the critical measure of the square and the expansive intuition of the compass.
Which brings us to this incredible piece of visual art that accompanies the text. Picture this in your mind's eye. Jesus is at the very center, radiating light with a vibrant, flaming heart.
It's a very classic image.
Yeah. He's surrounded by the 12 apostles, who are arranged in this beautiful, almost celestial composition. But woven seamlessly into this classic Christian painting are heavily coded Masonic symbols.
It's a striking integration showing how universal these archetypes really are.
Right below the figure of Christ, front and center, is a large Masonic square in compasses, featuring the letter G. Just below that, there's another square in compasses, but this one is cradling a golden chalice.
Yeah, that's a very distinct detail.
And at the very apex of the image, shining down over everything, is the all-seeing eye inside a glowing triangle. And at the bottom, flanking the central figures, two of the apostles are holding celestial symbols. One holds a radiant sun, the other a crescent moon with stars.
The sun and the moon are classic esoteric symbols representing, again, duality. The sun is day, active masculine energy and reason. The moon is night, passive, feminine energy and intuition.
So, what does this all mean? When you look at this artwork while reading the text, the mechanism of Thomas's mind suddenly makes sense. The tools of Masonry aren't just literal instruments for building stone walls.
Right.
They are the psychological mechanics of how a human being processes truth. Thomas is actively measuring reality with the square of his doubt, while simultaneously drawing a circle around the divine mystery with the compass of his faith. He is holding the sun and the moon. The artwork perfectly visualizes the text's core argument.
This raises an important question for anyone listening today. How do modern seekers navigate that feeling of being spiritually, intellectually, or even professionally stuck?
Yeah, because we all get stuck.
Constantly. In Masonic tradition, there's an earlier stage called the fellowcraft. The fellowcraft climbs a winding staircase to the middle chamber, seeking intellectual understanding, but intellect isn't enough.
You can't just logic your way to the truth.
Right. The Master Mason, like Thomas, has to go further. They have to abandon the staircase and descend into the darkness to find the real truth. True light arises only from honest darkness.
It's the Negretto stage again, gutting the kitchen, which brings all these incredibly rich, esoteric, alchemical, and Masonic threads right back down to earth, to you, the listener. Because Thomas's journey isn't just a quirky piece of ancient history.
Not at all.
It is highly applicable to your daily pursuit of knowledge.
If we distill the core lessons from all these dense, multifaceted sources, three things stand out clearly. First, doubt is not a sin, nor is it a failure. It is a necessary alchemical phase of transformation.
It's the first step.
Exactly. Second, your inner twin, that deep tension between your belief and your skepticism, must be integrated, not ignored. And third, authentic, direct experience will always transcend secondhand doctrine.
Think about the last time you experienced severe imposter syndrome, or a deep, paralyzing confusion when trying to learn a complex new topic. Maybe you felt an overwhelming skepticism about a project at work, or a philosophy you were raised with.
It happens all the time.
Society tells us to hide that friction, to fake it till we make it. We're terrified of being the one person in the room who says, "I don't get it." But based on what we've unpacked today, you shouldn't view that friction as a failure.
You're simply in the Negretto stage. You're actively acting as the Thomas of your own mind. By questioning, you are demanding direct experience instead of just blindly taking someone else's word for it.
You are picking up the square and checking the angles. You're refusing the cheap, easy answer to get to the real one.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with the reflective questions posed by our source material. Something for you to mull over in your own life.
How do you work with doubt? Do you treat it as a weakness to be hidden, or as a catalyst for deeper understanding? What inner twin must you reconcile right now to bring unity to your own journey?
The profound closing thought from the esoteric text is this: the greatest, most unshakable faith rises from the ashes of doubt. And the wounds of the Master, just like our own scars from the times we've stumbled in the dark, they aren't signs of failure. They are proof of an initiation complete.
And maybe, just maybe, the guy who spent 2,000 years being called a doubter was actually the only one brave enough to ask the questions we were all secretly thinking. Talk about the ultimate rebrand.